Hammurabi, circa 1810 BC to 1750 BC, was the sixth king of the first Babylonian dynasty, reigning from 1792 BC to 1750 BC. He was preceded by his father Sin-Muballit, who abdicated due to failing health. He extended Babylon's control throughout Mesopotamia through military campaigns. Hammurabi is known for the Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest surviving codes of law in recorded history. The name Hammurabi derives from the Amorite term Amurabi. The kinsman is a healer, itself from Amu, paternal kinsman, and Rabi, healer. Hammurabi was an Amorite first dynasty king of the city-state of Babylon, and inherited the power from his father Sin-Muballit in circa 1792 BC. Babylon was one of the many largely Amorite-ruled city-states that dotted the central and southern Mesopotamian plains and waged war on each other for control of fertile agricultural land. Though many cultures coexisted in Mesopotamia, Babylonian culture gained a degree of prominence among the literate classes throughout the Middle East under Hammurabi. The kings who came before Hammurabi had founded a relatively minor city-state in 1894 BC, which controlled little territory outside of the city itself. Babylon was overshadowed by older, larger, and more powerful kingdoms, such as Elam, Assyria, Isin, Eshnunna, and Larsa, for a century or so after its founding. However, his father Sin-Muballit had begun to consolidate rule of a small area of south-central Mesopotamia under Babylonian hegemony, and by the time of his reign had conquered the minor city-states of Borsippa, Kish, and Sippar. Thus Hammurabi ascended to the throne as the king of a minor kingdom in the midst of a complex geopolitical situation. The powerful kingdom of Eshnunna controlled the upper Tigris River, while Larsa controlled the river delta. To the east of Mesopotamia lay the powerful kingdom of Elam, which regularly invaded and forced tribute upon the small states of southern Mesopotamia. In northern Mesopotamia, the Assyrian king Shamshi-Adad I, who had already inherited centuries-old Assyrian colonies in Asia Minor, had expanded his territory into the Levant and central Mesopotamia, although his untimely death would somewhat fragment his empire. The first few decades of Hammurabi's reign were quite peaceful. Hammurabi used his power to undertake a series of public works, including heightening the city walls for defensive purposes and expanding the temples. In circa 1801 BC, the powerful kingdom of Elam, which straddled important trade routes across the Zagros Mountains, invaded the Mesopotamian plain. With allies among the plain states, Elam attacked and destroyed the kingdom of Eshnunna, destroying a number of cities and imposing its rule on portions of the plain for the first time. In order to consolidate its position, Elam tried to start a war between Hammurabi's Babylonian kingdom and the kingdom of Larsa. Hammurabi and the king of Larsa made an alliance when they discovered this duplicity and were able to crush the Elamites, although Larsa did not contribute greatly to the military effort. Angered by Larsa's failure to come to his aid, Hammurabi turned on that southern power, thus gaining control of the entirety of the lower Mesopotamian plain by circa 1763 BC. As Hammurabi was assisted during the war in the south by his allies from the north, such as Yamhad and Mari, the absence of soldiers in the north led to unrest. Continuing his expansion, Hammurabi turned his attention northwards, quelling the unrest and soon after crushing Eshnunna. Next, the Babylonian armies conquered the remaining northern states, including Babylon's former ally Mari, although it is possible that the conquest of Mari was a surrender without any actual conflict. Hammurabi entered into a protracted war with Ishme-Dagan I of Assyria for control of Mesopotamia, with both kings making alliances with minor states in order to gain the upper hand. Eventually Hammurabi prevailed, ousting Ishme-Dagan I just before his own death. Mut-Ashkur, the new king of Assyria, was forced to pay tribute to Hammurabi. However, Babylon did not rule Assyria directly. In just a few years, Hammurabi had succeeded in uniting all of Mesopotamia under his rule. The Assyrian kingdom survived but was forced to pay tribute during his reign, and of the major city-states in the region, only Aleppo and Qadna to the west in the Levant maintained their independence. However, one stele of Hammurabi has been found as far north as Diyarbakir, where he claims the title King of the Amorites. Vast numbers of contract tablets dated to the reigns of Hammurabi and his successors have been discovered, as well as 55 of his own letters. These letters give a glimpse into the daily trials of ruling an empire, from dealing with floods and mandating changes to a flawed calendar, to taking care of Babylon's massive herds of livestock. Hammurabi died and passed the reins of the empire on to his son Samsu-Iluna in circa 1750 BC, under whose rule the Babylonian Empire began to quickly unravel. The code of Hammurabi was inscribed on a stele and placed in a public place so that all could see it, although it is thought that few were literate. The stele was later plundered by the Elamites and removed to their capital, Susa. It was rediscovered there in 1901 in Iran and is now in the Louvre Museum in Paris. The Code of Hammurabi contained 282 laws written by scribes on 12 tablets. Unlike earlier laws, it was written in Akkadian, the daily language of Babylon, and could therefore be read by any literate person in the city. The structure of the code is very specific, with each offense receiving a specified punishment. The punishments tended to be very harsh by modern standards, with many offenses resulting in death, disfigurement, or the use of the eye for eye, tooth for tooth, lex talionis, law of retaliation philosophy. The code is also one of the earliest examples of the idea of presumption of innocence, and it also suggests that the accused and accuser have the opportunity to provide evidence. However, there is no provision for extenuating circumstances to alter the prescribed punishment. A carving at the top of the stele portrays Hammurabi receiving the laws from the god Shamash, or possibly Marduk, and the preface states that Hammurabi was chosen by the gods of his people to bring the laws to them. Parallels between this narrative and the giving of laws by God in Jewish tradition to Moses, and similarities between the two legal codes, suggests a common ancestor in the Semitic background of the two. Fragments of previous law codes have been found. However, David P. Wright argues that the covenant code of the biblical book of Exodus is directly, primarily, and throughout based upon the laws of Hammurabi. Similar codes of law were created in several nearby civilizations, including the earlier Mesopotamian examples of Ur-Nammu's code, laws of Eshnunna, and Code of Lipit Ishtar, and the later Hittite Code of Laws. Section 8. If anyone steal cattle or sheep, or an ass, or a pig, or a goat, if it belong to a god, or to the court, the thief shall pay 30-fold therefor. If they belonged to a freedman of the king, he shall pay 10-fold. If the thief has nothing with which to pay, he shall be put to death. Section 21. If a man make a breach in a house, they shall put him to death in front of that breach, and they shall thrust him therein. Section 55. If a man open his canal for irrigation, and neglect it, and the water carry away an adjacent field, he shall measure out grain on the basis of the adjacent fields. Section 59. If a man cut down a tree in a man's orchard without the consent of the owner of the orchard, he shall pay 1/2 mina of silver. Section 168. If a man set his face to disinherit his son, and say to the judges, I will disinherit my son, the judges shall inquire into his antecedents, and if the son have not committed a crime sufficiently grave to cut him off from sonship, the father may not cut off his son from sonship. Section 169. If he have committed a crime against his father, sufficiently grave to cut him off from sonship, they shall condone his first offense. If he commit a crime a second time, the father may cut off his son from sonship. Section 195. If a son strike his father, they shall cut off his fingers. Sections 196 to 201. If a man destroy the eye of another man, they shall destroy his eye. If one break a man's bone, they shall break his bone. If one destroy the eye of a free man, or break the bone of a free man, he shall pay 1 mana of silver. If one destroy the eye of a man's slave, or break a bone of a man's slave, he shall pay 1/2 his price. If a man knock out a tooth of a man of his own rank, they shall knock out his tooth. If one knocks out a tooth of a free man, he shall pay 1/3 mana of silver. Sections 218 to 219. If a physician operate on a man for a severe wound with a bronze lancet and cause that man's death, or open an abscess in the eye of a man with a bronze lancet and destroy the man's eye, they shall cut off his fingers. If a physician operate on a slave of a free man for a severe wound with a bronze lancet and cause his death, he shall restore a slave of equal value. Sections 229 to 232. If a builder build a house for a man, and do not make its construction firm, and the house which he has built collapse, and cause the death of the owner of the house, that builder shall be put to death. If it cause the death of a son of the owner of the house, they shall put to death a son of that builder. If it cause the death of a slave of the owner of the house, he shall give the owner of the house a slave of equal value. If it destroy property, he shall restore whatever it destroyed. And because he did not make the house which he built firm, and it collapsed, he shall rebuild the house which collapsed from his own property. During his reign, Babylon usurped the position of most holy city in southern Mesopotamia from its predecessor, Nippur, for the final time. Babylon had also previously enjoyed this status under the Akkadians, before it was restored to Nippur in the Sumerian Renaissance. Under the rule of Hammurabi's successor, Samsu-iluna, the short-lived Babylonian Empire began to collapse. In northern Mesopotamia, both the Amorites and Babylonians were driven from Assyria by Putzur-Sin, a native Akkadian-speaking ruler, circa 1740 BC. Around the same time, native Akkadian speakers threw off Amorite Babylonian rule in the far south of Mesopotamia, creating the Sealand dynasty in more or less the region of ancient Sumer. Hammurabi's ineffectual successors met with further defeats and loss of territory at the hands of Assyrian kings such as Adasi and Bel-Ibni, as well as to the Sealand dynasty to the south, Elam to the east, and the Kassites from the northeast. Thus was Babylon quickly reduced to the small and minor state it had once been upon its founding. The coup de grace for the Hammurabi's Amorite dynasty occurred in 1595 BC, when Babylon was sacked and conquered by the powerful Hittite Empire, thereby ending all Amorite political presence in Mesopotamia. However, the Indo-European speaking Hittites did not remain, turning over Babylon to their Kassite allies, a people speaking a language isolate from the Zagros Mountains region. This Kassite dynasty was to rule Babylon for over 400 years, adopting parts of the Babylonian culture, including Hammurabi's code of laws. Because of Hammurabi's reputation as a lawgiver, his depiction can be found in several US government buildings. Hammurabi is one of the 23 lawgivers depicted in marble bas-reliefs in the chamber of the US House of Representatives in the United States Capitol. A frieze by Adolf Weinman depicting the great lawgivers of history, including Hammurabi, is on the south wall of the US Supreme Court building. A theory current in the early part of the past century holds that Hammurabi was Amraphel, the king of Shinar, in the book of Genesis 14:1.